The day I met Alex, I was running late for work, which was nothing new, but losing my coffee order in the shuffle at the cafe was the cherry on top of my hectic morning. As I stood there, trying to argue with the barista that I hadn't ordered a double-shot espresso, but a simple latte, this guy stepped in with a smirk, holding up the wrong cup like a peace offering. "Looks like I got your order by mistake," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "Sorry about that. Let me make it up to you by buying your correct order." "What were you having?" I was taken aback, not just by the mix-up, but by his forwardness. Just a latte, thanks." "But you don't have to." "Nonsense," he interrupted, waving his hand dismissively at the barista to signal another order. "I insist. It's the least I can do for the inconvenience." "By the way, I'm Alex." "I'm Kimberly," I replied, still a bit thrown off by his charm, but starting to smile despite myself. There's something about a confident man that can turn a mundane morning upside down. We ended up sitting together, sipping our correctly ordered coffees this time, and chatting about everything and nothing. He had a way of making even the most trivial stories sound interesting. Before I knew it, I was late for work, not that I cared much at that moment. "You know, I should really get going," I said reluctantly, checking the time on my phone. "Let me grab your number before you run off." "I feel like this conversation isn't finished," Alex said, his blue eyes locking with mine in a way that felt like a dare. Normally, I'd hesitate, but something about him felt different. So, I found myself reciting my number, and he promised to call. True to his word, Alex called the next morning. "Hey, Kimberly, it's Alex. From the coffee mix-up, remember? Just wanted to make sure you started your day on the right foot this time." I laughed, charmed by his memory and persistence. "Well, thanks, Alex. I'm actually on time today, believe it or not." "That's great to hear. Maybe I'm your good luck charm. Listen, would you be up for dinner tonight?" His directness caught me off guard again, but I found myself agreeing. Our first date was as unconventional as our meeting, filled with laughter, playful banter, and an ease I hadn't felt in a long time. From that night on, our whirlwind romance took off at breakneck speed. Alex was attentive in ways I hadn't experienced before. He'd call me every morning, his voice a comforting constant that started my day. "Morning, sunshine. What's on the agenda today?" he'd ask, genuinely interested in the mundanities of my life. And every evening, without fail, "So, how was your day? Tell me everything." My friends noticed the change in me. "Girl, you're glowing. This guy must be something special," they'd tease, and I couldn't deny it. They were envious, comparing Alex's attentiveness to their own relationships, which suddenly seemed lackluster in comparison. Only my grandmother, with her years of wisdom and skepticism, voiced any concern. "Be careful, Kimberly," she warned one evening over the phone. "A man that needs to know your every move sounds like he's more interested in controlling than caring." I brushed her worries aside. "Oh, Grandma, you're just old-fashioned. Alex is just attentive, that's all." But deep down, a tiny part of me wondered if there was truth to her words. Was Alex's constant check-ins a sign of love or something more possessive? I shook the thought away, unwilling to tarnish the fairy tale I found myself living. Our wedding was something out of a magazine, honestly. If you'd told me a year ago I'd be getting hitched to Mr. Right, I'd have laughed in your face. But there I was, saying I do to Alex, the guy who swept me off my feet with a latte mix-up. Sounds like a rom-com, doesn't it? After the honeymoon phase, which was all sorts of amazing, we settled into my house. It was an old place I inherited from my folks, cozy and just right for two. Or so I thought. The warning signs started small. Alex always wanted to know who's who at my job. "So, who's on your team again? Any guys I should know about?" he'd ask, trying to sound casual, but failing miserably. "Just the usual crew, you know, Tom and Jerry," I'd joke, trying to lighten the mood. But Alex wasn't looking for laughs. "I'm serious, Kim. I gotta know who's trying to hit on my wife. Chill, Alex. It's an accounting firm, not a nightclub. The most excitement we get is when the coffee machine breaks. But the joke stopped when he took issue with my wardrobe. You're wearing that to work? He'd frown, eyeing a skirt that barely hit above the knee. Yeah? It's just a skirt, Alex. What's the big deal? The big deal? It's too short. What are you trying to do, distract every guy there? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's a normal skirt, for God's sake. Since when do you dictate what I wear? Since I noticed guys checking you out. It's not happening, Kim. It got worse from there. He'd trash anything he didn't approve of. Bright colors, skirts, even a pair of heels. Too flashy, he'd say, as if I was dressing for someone else, not myself. One evening, he decided meeting me from work should be a thing. Just making sure you get home safe, he claimed. More like checking up on me. Why the sudden interest in my commute? You know I can handle myself. I confronted him after a week of this. I don't trust those guys you work with, especially your boss. My boss? Really, Alex? He's like 60 and happily married. Doesn't matter. I've seen how these old guys look at young women. The last straw was when he demanded I quit my job because my boss was a man. You've lost it, Alex. I love my job, and I'm not quitting because of your insecurities. He stormed out, and later, I heard him on the phone with his mom, ranting about how unreasonable I was being. Next thing I knew, his mom was at our door, asking me to be gentle with Alex's feelings. I was at a loss. Here I was, newly married, and already caught in a battle I didn't choose. Alex's jealousy was turning my dream into a nightmare, and no amount of talking seemed to get through to him. I loved him, but at what cost? The thing with Alex got worse bit by bit. It started with those nagging comments about me going to work, and before I knew it, it was full-blown arguments every other night. One night, things got real heated, and Alex stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him so hard I thought the glass would shatter. That's when his mom, who'd been sitting quietly, trying to pretend she wasn't there for the whole showdown, finally spoke up. You know, his ex did a number on him, she said, her voice low, like she was sharing a state secret. Cheated on him with some guy she worked with. That's why he's like this. I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and sympathy. I get that, but it's not fair to me. I'm not her. I know, darling, I know. But maybe, have you thought about seeing someone? Like a therapist? I had, of course, but getting Alex to agree was a different story. I've tried. He won't hear of it. Thinks it's a bunch of nonsense. His mom nodded, looking as defeated as I felt. He's stubborn, always has been. But something's gotta give, Kimberly. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner where Alex had grilled me about talking to the delivery guy for too long, I decided it was time for a serious chat. Alex, we need to talk. This, whatever this is, it's not healthy, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. What's not healthy? Me caring about my wife? He scoffed, crossing his arms defensively. It's not caring when you're tracking my every move, Alex. It's controlling, and it's suffocating. He rolled his eyes. Here we go again. Kim, you're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? Am I really? Because I feel like I can't breathe without you questioning me. Your mom thinks we should see someone, you know, a therapist. No way. He shot back, like I'd suggested something outrageous. I'm not airing our dirty laundry to some stranger. It's not dirty laundry, Alex. It's trying to fix what's broken, I argued, but it was like talking to a brick wall. In the end, I was at my wit's end. I loved Alex, but living like this was tearing me apart. So, I made a call to my boss, explained a bit of the situation without going into too much detail, and asked if I could work from home. Whatever you need, Kimberly. You're valuable to us, and if this helps, consider it done, my boss said, more understanding than I'd hoped for. When I told Alex, he was surprisingly okay with it. Fine, if that's what it takes, he said, almost relieved. But that relief? It was short-lived. The peace was fragile, like walking on eggshells. I'd bought some time, but deep down, I knew this was far from over. Working from home was supposed to be the solution, but if anything, it felt like I'd just trapped myself. Alex's jealousy didn't let up, it morphed into something even more suffocating. One day, the doorbell rang. It was just a courier dropping off a package I'd ordered online. "Who's that?" Alex barked from the living room, his voice sharp with suspicion. "Just the courier," I called back, signing off for my package. He was at my side in seconds, peering over my shoulder as if he'd catch a glimpse of some secret affair in the brief exchange. "Seems like you're ordering a lot these days. Meeting new friends?" I couldn't believe my ears. "Are you serious right now?" "It's just work stuff, Alex." His glare lingered a moment longer before he stormed off, muttering under his breath. I shook my head, disbelief turning to anger. This was no way to live. It didn't stop there. Every call I had to make for work, he'd be lurking nearby, trying to listen in. If I laughed a little too hard at a colleague's joke, there'd be hell to pay later. The day he lost it over a taxi ride was the day I knew something had to change. I'd gone to visit my parents, a rare outing these days, and decided to take a taxi home. As soon as I walked through the door, Alex was on me like a hawk. "Who was that guy?" he demanded, his eyes wild. "The taxi driver, Alex." "What on earth are you on about?" "Don't play dumb, Kimberly. I saw you, laughing and chatting with him. Planning your next rendezvous?" My jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." He was just being polite. You know, small talk? The thing normal people do? His accusations were ridiculous, but they hurt all the same. It was clear he didn't trust me, not one bit. And then, the final straw, I caught him snooping through my phone one evening, looking for evidence of an affair that existed only in his head. "That's it, Alex," I exploded, snatching my phone from his hands. "I can't do this anymore. Your jealousy is out of control." He tried to apologize, begging me on his knees, promising he'd change. I wanted to believe him, God, I did. But I couldn't live like this, walking on eggshells in my own home. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. I started noticing a car following me. To the grocery store, to my parents' house, even to the hairdresser. The same car, every time. My stomach twisted every time I saw it in the rearview mirror. I called the police, and they pulled the car over one day after I left the gym. Inside, they found a guy with a camera, a notebook full of my daily routines, and a file with my picture on top. He was a private detective, hired by Alex. I confronted Alex when I got home. "A detective, Alex? Really? Is this what it's come to?" He tried to explain, to justify himself, but I was done listening. "You need help, Alex, but not from me. Get out of my house. We're done." He begged, pleaded, but I was firm. "No, Alex. It's over. I'm filing for divorce." And just like that, the man I once loved was out of my life. The locks were changed, his stuff packed up and left on the porch. I was alone, truly alone, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The doorbell rang unexpectedly one afternoon, pulling me away from a pile of work. I sighed, not in the mood for visitors, but curiosity nudged me to check. Through the peephole, I saw Alex's mother, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands nervously clasped together. Reluctantly, I opened the door. "Kimberly, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Sure, come in." The tension was palpable as we sat across from each other in the living room. "I heard about everything. Alex told me," she started, avoiding my gaze. I crossed my arms, steeling myself. I'm guessing he didn't tell you everything, or you wouldn't be here. She sighed. He's my son, Kimberly. I just want to help him. To help you both, if I can. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping. Help? By convincing me to take back a man who hired a detective to spy on me? Who doesn't trust me? She flinched at the harshness of my words, but pressed on. He's sick, Kimberly. He needs therapy, not abandonment. And what about what I need? My voice rose, frustration boiling over. Do I just forget about my own peace of mind for Alex's sake? The room fell silent, the weight of our shared pain hanging heavy between us. I didn't know it was this bad, she finally whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. I sighed, the anger draining from me as I saw the genuine concern in her eyes. I can't be his keeper, his therapist. I've tried, but it's killing me. She nodded, understanding dawning on her face. I'm sorry, Kimberly. I truly am. I just wanted to fix things, but I see now that it's not my place. After his mom left, things didn't get quieter. If anything, they cranked up a notch. Alex started calling me, over and over. Sometimes it was just to check if I was home, other times he'd drop hints, asking if I was out with someone. Just wondering where you're at, he'd say, a thin veil of casualness in his voice. One evening, while I was trying to relax with a book, my phone buzzed. It was him, again. Hey, just checking in. You home tonight? Yeah, Alex, like I've been every night this week, I replied, my patience wearing thin. Alright, just asking. No need to get defensive, he shot back before hanging up. Not an hour later, I saw a shadow outside my window. Curious and a bit unnerved, I peeked through the blinds. There he was, Alex, just strolling back and forth like he had every right to be there, glancing towards my house every so often. My heart raced, a mix of fear and anger bubbling up. The next day, I called my grandma, needing someone to talk to, someone who'd understand. Kimberly, dear, you can't just wish this sort of thing away. He's shown you who he is. You need to protect yourself now, she advised, her tone serious. I know, but calling the police. It feels so final, I said, the words catching in my throat. Sometimes, final is what you need to be safe. Don't let your heart cloud your judgment, she urged, her concern palpable even through the phone. We talked a bit more, but by the end of the call, I was no more ready to dial the police than I had been before. It was a step I wasn't sure I could take, not yet. But with Alex's shadow looming larger and larger, I was running out of excuses not to. It was an ordinary afternoon until there was a knock at my door. Standing there was Alex's boss, Mr. Johnson, clutching a stack of documents. Is Alex here? I need him to see these, he said, looking past me as if expecting Alex to appear any second. No, he's not. He doesn't live here anymore, I explained, trying to hide the discomfort. But you can come in for a moment if you'd like. I can get him to call you? Mr. Johnson seemed surprised but accepted the offer. Well, sure. That'd be kind. Thank you. As I put the kettle on for tea, chatting awkwardly about nothing in particular, a glow caught my eye through the kitchen window. It was bright, too bright. I rushed to the window, my heart dropping as I saw flames engulfing a car, Mr. Johnson's car. Without thinking, I ran outside, and there was Alex, a triumphant smile plastered across his face, watching the car burn. Look at how your lover's car is burning. That's for trying to replace me. He laughed, as if he'd done something heroic. I was speechless, horror-struck at the sight and his chilling laughter. Alex, what have you done? His grin faltered when Mr. Johnson came barreling out of the house, documents forgotten. My car? What the, Alex? The confusion and shock on his face mirrored my own. Alex's laughter died, his face draining of color as he realized who the car belonged to. I thought, he stammered, backing away as the reality of his actions hit him. Mr. Johnson was livid, his voice thundering. You thought what? That setting my car on fire was a good idea? You're done, Alex. Fired. Don't even think about showing up at the office again. Alex fell to his knees, pleading. Please, no, I didn't mean, I thought she was seeing someone. I got it all wrong. But Mr. Johnson was already dialing the police, his voice steady as he reported the arson. Alex's pleas fell on deaf ears. The courtroom was a stage set for drama, the air thick with anticipation and the weight of impending justice. Alex was there, handcuffed and looking nothing like the man I had married. Across the room, Mr. Johnson, Alex's former boss, sat with an unreadable expression, his presence a silent demand for accountability. Alex's mother, a frail figure overshadowed by the magnitude of the moment, was hunched over in her seat, her quiet sobs punctuating the tense silence. As the judge entered, the room fell into a deeper hush. She reviewed her notes briefly before addressing the court, her voice clear and devoid of any unnecessary warmth. Alexander James, you stand convicted of arson, harassment, and a series of related offenses. These actions not only endangered lives, but also violated the sanctity of personal freedom and trust. Alex's lawyer made a final, feeble plea for leniency, citing Alex's troubled past and the emotional turmoil he had suffered. Your Honor, my client has struggled with personal issues that contributed to his actions. We request consideration of these factors in your sentencing. The judge, however, remained unmoved. While the court acknowledges the defendant's personal challenges, it cannot condone actions that blatantly disregard the law and the well-being of others. Turning to Alex, she delivered the sentence. You are hereby sentenced to a term of imprisonment. Furthermore, you are ordered to maintain a distance of no less than 150 meters from Kimberly Thompson at all times. The gavel's fall echoed like a death knell for the life I once knew with Alex. His mother's cries filled the courtroom, a heartrending soundtrack to the closing of a painful chapter. As we filed out of the courtroom, Alex's mother approached me, her eyes brimming with tears. Kimberly, I don't know what to say. I'm so ashamed of what he's done to you, she stuttered, her voice breaking. Mrs. James, you don't need to apologize for Alex. This isn't your fault, I replied, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions within me. But I raised him. I should have seen the signs, done something to stop it. She insisted, her despair palpable. We both know Alex made his own choices. Blaming yourself won't change what happened, I said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. After the dust settled and I took stock of the wreckage left behind, it hit me hard. I was carrying around a lot more than just bad memories. Fear had seeped into my bones, coloring the way I saw the world and especially men. Acknowledging that was tough, but it was also the first step on a long road back to myself. I decided to see a psychologist, Dr. Lewis. The thought of spilling my guts to a stranger was daunting, but something had to change. Kimberly, it's good to see you. Dr. Lewis greeted me with a warm, reassuring smile during our first session. His office was a cozy, cluttered space, books and papers everywhere, making him seem more approachable somehow. Yeah, well, let's see if you still say that after a few sessions, I replied, half joking, half nervous about opening up. He chuckled, not missing a beat. I have a feeling we'll get along just fine. Tell me, what brings you here? So, I told him. About Alex, the fear, the inability to trust. It all came pouring out, messy and raw. Sounds like you've been through the ringer, Kimberly. But you're here, and that's what counts. We'll work through this together, Dr. Lewis assured me, his voice steady and kind. Session after session, I felt layers of fear and doubt slowly peeling away. It wasn't overnight magic, but with Dr. Lewis's help, I began to see light at the end of the tunnel. Feeling a bit more like myself, I returned to work. Sliding back into the rhythm of my job was easier than I thought it would be. My colleagues welcomed me with open arms, their support a balm on my still healing wounds. My grandmother, ever the wise sage, noticed the change in me too. You're looking more like yourself, Kimberly. I'm proud of you, you know. I smiled, leaning into her hug. Thanks, Grandma. I should have listened to you from the start. She waved me off, her usual mix of humility and stubbornness. Hush, child. You're here now, that's what matters. Just promise me you'll keep listening to those who care about you. I promise, Grandma.